1957 Marine action Japanese movies. The Eagle and the Hawk. Starring Ishihara Yujiro. Directed by Inoue Yumeji. Late at night at a Tokyo wharf, the chief engineer Kobayashi Joshiro of the cargo ship Kaiyo Maru was killed on the way back from a bar. It was a manner of death that suggested it was the result of someone's grudge. The murderer's face is unknown, but he appeared to be a tall, long-legged young man. He whistled as he walked slowly away from the scene of the crime. This is the scene just before the departure of the Kaiyo Maru, scheduled for 12 o'clock the next day. A large crane is carrying many heavy objects onto the ship. A sailor's pleasure is drinking while watching the sea, and according to the sailor Hikobe, Nishimura Akira and his mother in charge of the kitchen, Yanagisawa Shinichi, they are happy to say that Captain Onizame, Nihon Yanaji-kan, will give them drinks during the voyage. Outside the ship, the police are questioning first mate Goro, Nagato Hiroyuki, the son of the murdered chief engineer. He tells Goro that his father is not someone who deserves to be killed, and that the knife used was bought in Singapore. At that moment, a tall young man, Sankachi Ishihara Yujiro, carrying a ukulele and a large bag on his shoulder, boards the ship. He says that this is a terrible muddy ship. When asked by Oyaji, Soyamura Kunitaro, who seems to be the leader of the crew, who he is, Sankachi shows his notebook to the vice captain Miyazawa, Hiramatsu Saburo, saying that he is a replacement sailor from the Seamen's Union. Matsue Taru, who seems to be a rough man, pushes him from behind, saying that he won't accept that he is underestimating the ship. But Sankachi takes a rather bold stance, saying that we should just come before they leave. Matsu, who seems to be hot-headed, prepares to punch him, but Oyaji stops him with his elbow. Sankachi is allowed to board the ship. Then Sasaki, Mikuni Rentaro, a tall young man wearing similar colored shoes and blue jeans, boards the ship. He says the same thing as Sankachi, that it's a dilapidated ship. Sasaki also says he's come from the Seamen's Union to replace the sailors and shows them his notebook, but they refuse, saying that others have already arrived. So Sasaki insists that it's a fake and that I am the real one. Sankachi tells Sasaki to say it again, and as soon as Sasaki replies that I am the real one and you're the fake, Sankachi punches Sasaki in the jaw, causing Sasaki to fall. They then start fighting. These two are the eagle and hawk of this movie. The sailors are all rough characters, so they seem to enjoy this kind of fight and watch it with amusement. It feels like they're watching a boxing match. But Goro, who has just finished interrogating them about his father's murder, comes running over and stops them. The captain signaled that both men could board and that the ship was about to depart, and the ship departed. This ship was bound for Hong Kong. After a while, the captain went to his room and found the same knife that had been used to kill the chief engineer and a photo of the captain and the chief engineer in his desk. The captain's daughter Akiko Asao Kururiko, who had been hiding there, threatened her father. Her father was strongly opposed to his daughter going on a cruise for recreation, but he agreed to go with her because she said she couldn't turn back. The reason why the captain said it was dangerous this time may be something only he knows. What kind of danger is there? When Goro entered the chief engineer's room, which was his late father's room, he found the same knife that had been used to kill his father on the desk. He was instantly worried about why the same thing was there. In the room was a photo of Goro with his father when he was young. The captain called Goro, so Akiko went to the captain's room and asked Goro to take her because she was a stowaway, but the captain was against it. Akiko asked Goro why because he looked gloomy, and the captain told her that her father was killed. Goro replied that he didn't know why, but that someone had killed him. Goro then took out a knife from the captain's desk and asked the captain if anyone else had bought this knife, to which he replied that he didn't know. Goro then said that my father had been killed with this knife. He thought for sure that it was his father's knife, but this was on the desk just now, and it didn't seem like a mere coincidence. The three of them had the same knife. Someone had stabbed his father with the remaining one. The captain just said that he didn't know. He didn't know. The captain's expression at this point was one that said it would be bad if people found out. At that moment, a whistle was heard from somewhere. The tune is the same as the whistle played by the murderer who left when Goro's father was killed. The captain looks frightened, and doesn't even notice when the cigarette he was smoking falls. He leaves the cabin to look for anyone, but there is no one there. When Akiko asks what's wrong, Dad, he says it's nothing, but there must be something that has made him frightened. He had seen Sasaki, shirtless, nearby the cabin. Goro says he wants to take a statement just to be sure, and calls Sasaki and Sankachi to record it. They only ask for their names. ages, and whether they have a criminal record. He tells them not to lay hands on women and that fighting is forbidden, to which Senkachi replies that he has no eye for women, that he loves fighting, and that it depends on the person. Seeing the young man Takeru Hadaka Keisuke frequently listening to the radio on deck, Oyaji advises him to live his life without worrying too much because he is young. Oyaji gives him advice that seems very effective, saying not to think that your lover has abandoned you, but to think that you have abandoned her. Your senior's advice comes from 30 years of experience, so it's important to listen to them, no matter what world you're in. By chance, Senkachi and Sasaki return to the cruise room at the same time. The rough Matsu told them that they needed to say hello when they entered a room, and Sasaki responded nonchalantly, "Nice to meet you." But Senkachi didn't say anything, so Matsu got angry and asked if he had something to say. Senkachi replied that he couldn't say hello to someone he didn't like, and Matsu started punching him. A fight broke out and Matsu started using a knife. Oyaji tried to stop him, but Matsu didn't. Just as Senkachi was in danger, Sasaki kicked the table and chair in front of him, sending them flying in front of Matsu. Immediately after, Sasaki hit Matsu in the back with both hands from behind and took the knife back. During the fight, something like a notebook fell out of Sasaki's pocket, but Senkachi picked it up and handed it to Sasaki. The quarrel was settled for the time being when Aka-san, the kitchen man, called out that everyone should eat. When Aka-san was cutting bread, a black, dirty hand came out from below. Aka-san noticed that the bread was gone. He looked down and found a dirty woman munching on bread and ham. He told everyone and most of the crew came to see. They carried her from the kitchen to the deck, splashed water on her, and washed her face and body from the outside of her clothes with a deck brush soaked in detergent, cleaning her up. When the dirt was removed, she was beautiful, and everyone was happy and surprised. Her name was Akimi, and she was a stowaway who had followed Senkachi, who she had fallen in love with. Akimi said that she should just pay the captain, but Matsu was in a good mood and said that he would let her on the ship even without payment. However, Akimi said, "What are you talking about? I've been chasing after the man I fell in love with so much for 3 years now." When she saw Senkachi, she ran off. Akimi asks to come with him, but Senkachi calls her an idiot and says he'll throw her into the sea if she doesn't, and pretends to throw her in the sea, but the crew sympathizes with her and tells her to stop. Akimi looks completely different after changing her dirty clothes, cuts up some pickled radishes in the kitchen and goes to the crew's room to have them as a side dish for dinner, and sits next to Senkachi. She cares for Senkachi more than she does for a mother, telling him to eat her pickled radish, which Senkachi ignores and tells her to go away. Matsu tells Akimi to come sit next to him, but Akimi says she doesn't want to be near him, to which Matsu gets angry and says what he's thinking. Unable to stand this, Oyaji puts Akimi in the storage room and locks her in from the outside. This is because he expects her to cause trouble every time. Tonight is a beautiful night with many stars. The sea at night is unobstructed, so when the weather is good, the sky is filled with stars, and it must be much more beautiful than on land. While Goro was standing alone on the deck, Akiko came up to him and started talking about his father, who was murdered, saying that he was a good uncle, and that, at last, he was left alone. Akiko told him that she and her father were together, and that she had been spoiled up until now, but from now on she would be a good sister. Goro said that he wanted to marry her after this voyage, and Akiko replied that her father thought so too, but that it was too late to talk about this now because they were raised so close from a young age, so she should wait a little longer, and left the deck. Senkachi, who had been listening, appeared and said that tonight was a good night to woo a woman, but told Goro that he couldn't listen to her because it was too long. Senkachi continues, "The chief engineer who was killed on the beach in Tokyo is your father, right?" Goro confirms, "I heard at a bar on the beach that he had a grudge that was not satisfied even after he was killed. He was just a drinking buddy who I didn't know his name or address. It seems to be a story of a long ago feud. Anazane probably knows, so you should ask him." Senkachi says, "The culprit didn't know that he had a son like you. If culprit had known, he might have regretted it a little. The culprit was a tall, good-looking man with a bitter past. Anything more is a man's promise." If you listen to Senkachi's story in detail, Senkachi will talk as if he knew the cause of the crime in detail, as if he killed a man. But this is a movie. Goro is listening under the assumption that there is definitely another culprit, so his brain doesn't think that Senkachi is the culprit. Moreover, it is even more so when Senkachi talks about the reason for the crime from a third-party perspective without any personal feelings. Goro leaves the deck, telling Senkachi that he will take him to the police when he gets back and telling him what he just said. Was this conversation held when no one else was around? In fact, someone was lying on the deck listening. It was Sasaki. Sasaki said that it might be best to leave it to the police, as you said, and he also said that no matter how much the police pursue you, he won't let them get in the way. Sasaki replied. The man was tall and seemed like a good-looking guy with a tough personality, and if his right punch was strong, he'd be just like you. If you get hit square on with that right punch, it seems you'll fly 5 meters, but that bastard looks just like me. Senkachi adds, would the real culprit tell Senkachi this much? Sasaki already knows who the real culprit is and is telling the story. He must have known who the real culprit was when he boarded the ship. Today the sea was rough and Akiko and Akimi, who are not used to boats, got seasick. Have you ever gotten car sick or seasick? I get really sick on buses and boats, so I didn't like school trips. There is a big psychological difference between having something to vomit in and not having one. A plastic bag that doesn't leak water is more useful than newspaper. Akimi, who was helping out in the kitchen, was told by Akasan to go back to the storehouse and get some motion sickness medicine, so she should go to bed. While she was standing in the hallway, Matsu appeared and took the unwell Akimi to the storehouse and began to assault her. When she gets seasickness, she feels sick and has no resistance, so Akimi was in a very dangerous situation. Senkachi was contacted and came to her rescue, and she was able to escape danger. Feeling relieved, Akimi hugged Senkachi. Senkachi pushed her away, telling her to stop. Afterwards, Akimi immediately takes out the newspaper article about the murder in Tokyo Bay that she had kept hidden, and says that Senchan did it. So she boarded the ship to do the high jump, but she doesn't care what Senchan does, and begs him to take her wherever she wants. But Senkachi rejects her as usual, saying that she boarded the ship out of a man's pride, and that it's no place for a woman. That night, as Senkachi is whistling his usual tune, Akiko appears and asks what the tune is, to which he replies that he doesn't know, but that it's a song that his late father used to sing, and he whistles the tune to Akiko. As the captain and sub-captain are discussing the route, the same whistling is heard, and the captain's face looks frightened again. She stands up saying that it's her, and opens the door, only to find that it is Akiko, the girl he had just learned the tune from Senkichi. The captain realizes that the person who taught him the tune is on deck, and when he goes there, he finds Senkichi standing there. The captain says, "You killed Sanzo, the murder in Tokyo Bay, too." Which Senkichi replies, "You guessed it, I'm not going to do something cowardly like you guys. I'll do it fair and square." Senkichi whistles again, and Onion tells him to stop, but he says this song will strangle him, so he should cleanse his neck, and then they part ways. Goro, who has been listening to what is going on, asks if the captain knows anything about his father's death, to which Goro replies that it was him who killed his father. Anazane then takes out the same knife from his desk, and asks if he wants to kill Senkichi, and asks if he wants to take care of the rest. Goro asks what the captain is going to do, and he says selfish things like not prying into his affairs. "What are you scared of?" Captain Goro says, as if he's asking for the captain to kill him because he's scared. Anazane simply says that he is saying this because he hates Senkichi for killing his father, but he hasn't told Goro the whole story yet. Goro confesses his feelings, saying that he can't repay murder with murder. Tonight is the night of the party. Akimi is dancing, the crew is singing, and it's a wild party. Not content with staying in the room, they go out onto the deck and make a ruckus. Oyaji seems to get along well with Sasaki, saying that Sasaki's eyes are no ordinary thing, that he's no thief or anything like that, and tells him about his past. 30 years ago, a woman he loved betrayed him, so in a fit of anger he killed her. Since then, he has never come ashore and has only lived on the sea. Tomorrow will be the 30th anniversary, but it has been a difficult 30 years. Sasaki comforts him by saying that the statute of limitations has probably expired. The statute of limitations for murder is 25 years, meaning the crime is extinguished after that. This was the law when this movie was made, but was revised to 30 years in 2010. Meanwhile, Goro, having confirmed that Senkichi was the one who killed his father, is on the deck asking Senkichi why. Senkichi begins to speak. It was already 20 years ago, in the outskirts of Osaka, there were 3 sailors who were overwhelmed with work, and all of them had bad ideas. They set up a fraudulent company, ran off with the money they collected from people, and used it to buy this ship. But then something happened to the three of them over the registration. My father was the one who was completely fooled, and your father and Donazane took over the ship. I'll never forget it. When I was little, I heard a knock on the shutters in the middle of the night, and when I opened them, I found my father hitting his head against the wall in frustration, and the next morning he was cold and dead. I'm an orphan like a beggar, and I've had a hard time. Since then, I've continued to hate your father and Donazane. Then the other day at the bar, I found out he was your father and killed him. I wasn't just one man, but another, so I thought I'd bully him and get on this ship. What do you think? Asks Senkichi. Goro says that if that's true, then his feelings are natural. But what will happen if you continue to hate someone? Goro says that he won't pursue you, and that you shouldn't pursue the captain either. When asked how it is, Senkichi advises him that he will do it no matter what, and that you should protect the captain and not get caught up in it. I see. I'll fight to protect human lives and destroy violence, Goro says. Whether this proof, that is, Senkichi's confession, is true is something that the police should investigate and the courts should rule on. That is why Sasaki is on board. However, emotionally, both Senkichi and Goro are right. However, if a judgment is not made based on the law, as Goro says, it will be a vendetta forever. The next day, one of the lifeboat's rescue boats was missing, and there were marks on the thick rope that looked like it had been cut with a knife. When Sasaki and Senkichi arrived late to the scene, Goro asked them who had done it. Senkichi replied that they were just sailors and would not do anything dirty, and Sasaki also said that of course he had not done it. The sub-captain ordered Sasaki and Senkichi to loosen the iron net that was wrapped around the pulley, and when Senkichi loosened it, the iron chain came loose from the pulley and a large, heavy chunk of iron fell on top of Senkichi. But Sasaki pushed Senkichi and saved him. If Sasaki had not pushed Senkichi, he would have died instantly. Doesn't it seem as if there is some kind of grudge between the boat, the thick rope, and this incident? This will become clear if you look back at the story. As a clue, the newspaper with the article on the murder that Akemi had was found at the scene of the accident. Senkichi calls Akemi to the warehouse to find out if this newspaper is the same one that Akemi had, and questions her. It seems she threw it away. This leads to the identity of the mastermind behind this incident. Senkichi then asks Akemi to investigate the identity of this guy Sasaki, to which Senkichi admits that he really has a good intuition, meaning that he committed the murder at the dock, and that he hits the nail on the head. Akemi again tells her that she will follow Sen-chan no matter what she does. There is a large lid below the deck, and many luggages to be transported to Hong Kong are loaded on it. Hikobali, a drunkard, opens the lid and sneaks in below, where he is drinking whiskey with satisfaction by himself. Hikobali goes back up to the crew's room and hands the still unopened whiskey to Aka-chan, who discovers that it is water. Sasaki did not personally confirm that it was water, but after Hikobali retreats, he investigates alone in the luggage room. Later, Akemi receives a wink from Senkichi telling her to go and investigate Sasaki's identity, so she goes to the deck to see what's going on. Akemi points out that Sasaki saved Senkichi's life, and asks the exact opposite question, saying that there was no need to save a guy like that. But Sasaki just laughs. Akemi knows that there is a notebook in his pocket, and puts her hand in her back pocket to steal it, saying that she has already broken up with Senkichi, but Sasaki sees through her. Akemi then gives up and says that he is a detective who came aboard to catch Senkichi, to which he replies that he is just a sailor. Meanwhile, Senkichi is checking Sasaki's bed for evidence, and finds handcuffs. He was a detective. As the saying goes, deceive your allies before deceiving your enemies. Senkichi tells Akemi that Sasaki was just a sailor, and that he owes him for saving his life twice. The next day, it is discovered that the radio has stopped working, and even having an expert look at it, it cannot be fixed. This is very dangerous, because it is a life-saving tool that is absolutely necessary when requesting rescue from a large ship nearby in a storm. After a series of troubles, Hikobali won something like a lottery and was screaming like a madman alone on the deck, claiming that he would win 1 million yen. He played around with the gambling, promising to keep a record of his losses and pay them later, since he would not have cash if he lost. He did not know what would happen until he successfully converted them into cash. On the night when it became clear that a storm was approaching, Akiko told Senkichi that she wanted to follow him wherever he went, no matter where he was, and it seems that her thoughts became stronger after seeing Senkichi's actions. In this kind of atmosphere, I imagine that the desire for revenge would gradually weaken. But what do you think? Okimi was looking for Senkachi because she had something to tell him, but when Aka-chan told her that her relationship with Akiko had changed, saying that she had caught a young and beautiful sea bream, Okimi became jealous of their relationship and tried to shoot Senkachi with a gun. Akiko told Okimi to shoot Akiko if she was going to shoot him, but no matter what, Okimi couldn't bring herself to shoot Senkachi. Akiko, knowing that Okimi loved Senkachi so much that she tried to shoot him with a gun, returned to the captain's room and broke down in tears. The captain, who was watching this, discovered a ukulele on the back of the bed with a note saying "From my father to Senkachi, a gift from Singapore" written on it, and became angry, saying that he was a bad guy and that he was the only one to be avoided. Then, on the deck where the storm had started, the captain took a knife and told Senkachi not to lay a hand on his daughter, in all seriousness, to fight. However, Senkachi grabbed the captain's wrist and dropped the knife, and Senkachi grabbed the knife instead. After that, he didn't do anything like that, even though Captain Onizame was the murderer of his father. Then Sasaki appeared in, as if to ask him to hand over the knife. Senkachi handed it to Sasaki. After the captain left, he called out "Detective," and Sasaki looked back at Senkachi in surprise. "Don't hide it. I saw your handcuffs," he says, "and I don't know what to do anymore. I've always wanted to kill him, but he's also someone's parent. It's so easy to forget grudges against people. What should I do from now on?" he asks Sasaki. Sasaki says, "It's difficult for me too. I don't know. I'm just going to arrest you," and leaves the place. The storm is getting more and more intense, and a lot of seawater is flowing onto the deck. The captain and sub-captain are both checking out whether a boat is good, and whether gunpowder is good. It's a guess, but the plan is for the two of them to escape on the boat, set fire to the gunpowder on the big ship, blow it up, and share the large amount of money from the insurance. The Aka-chan in the kitchen is also thinking alone about the fact that there are many bottles of water instead of alcohol, so the Aka-chan sneaks into the luggage area below the deck by himself, and when he shines his flashlight on it, he sees Hikobui holding a bottle of whiskey. The reason they came here was because they found a bottle containing only water, which they thought was strange, and they both wanted to investigate. Even more surprising was that when they shone a light on the area, they found a large amount of gunpowder. At this point, the crew knew what was going to happen. It was the captain's voyage fraud. That's why he was carrying a large number of bottles of water, which would not cost anything to lose. The gunpowder was for the purpose of an explosion. If it exploded, it would be difficult to find the cause in this storm. In the conversation between the captain, sub-captain, and Goro, the ship had been in use for over 20 years, and if they tried to pick up the ship, she would sink without being able to release water. There was no way Goro was a friend of the two of them. "Captain, you're up to something," Goro pointed out. All the bottles that Hikobui and Aka-chan brought to the crew room were not alcohol, but water, and all the cans were filled with stones. Dad made everyone sit down and began to talk. "I once heard a story from a Spanish sailor in Rio de Janeiro. When a ship left the port, boats drifted one after another, and one of them caught fire for an unknown reason. After that, the captain and his comrades got on the only boat and started rowing, and the crew jumped into the sea. Shooting began from the boat, and when one of the crew members who was lucky enough to survive reported it, the captain reported that the ship had sunk in a barge and all the crew had died." Sasaki continued, "And the ship had a huge insurance policy. Aka-chan and Hikobui told him that there was gunpowder. The plot was already set. There was an opinion that Onizame might do it. Everyone went to where Onizame was, and there was gunpowder. The sake was water, and the canned goods were stones." Captain Onizame yelled out what he was planning, and he said, "I'm the captain," and just stated his post, but the crew couldn't accept it. At that moment, there was a big bang. The chain that had been wound around the ship had come loose, and if it wasn't rewound, a hole would appear in the ship. Everyone realized that they had to fix that first, so they all went to fix it. But Goro and Sasaki were swallowed up by the sea. Senkachi put his right hand between the edge of the ship's deck and the rope to support it, and the weight made it impossible to remove it. The rope was their only lifeline. If they let go of it, they would sink into the sea. However, thanks to Senkachi's determination to endure the pain and pull on, the two were able to return to the ship. Then, they needed to use firepower to pull the chain back up. So Sasaki lit a fire and used it to rewind the chain. Senkachi, Sasaki, and Goro put their arms around each other and rejoiced. Immediately afterwards, the captain, who was giving instructions to everyone, was crushed by a falling crane and died. In the end, Anazame's insurance fraud plan was a complete failure, and luckily everyone was safe except for Storm. The wind and the amount of water was so strong that even walking would have blown you away with the spray from the sea. And I felt grateful to the actors for the hard work that must have been involved in this location shoot. The storm subsided and the sea became calm. Akiko asks Senkachi if her dead father was a bad person, but he praises Captain Anazame, saying that her father was too good for this old ship. Senkachi tells Akiko that there are many people in this world who ruin their lives by hating others, so she shouldn't hate them either. But he is also telling himself that, if no one on the crew had a bad word to say about Anazame, Akiko would never have to know who her real father was. Akiko asks Senkachi to take her wherever she wants, but Senkachi refuses, saying that he would like to take her, but that he has a woman he likes. He says that he promised to open a shop with Akimi. He leaves behind the words, "Farewell, I won't forget you." This is Goro's room, and Sasaki shows him his police ID. Sasaki explains his plan. Police will arrest Senkachi when they enter Moji City. When Sasaki asks if Goro didn't know about the cargo, he answers that he was at the police station until just before departure. Afterwards, Sasaki goes out onto the deck and meets Soichi. Sasaki is wearing a white summer blazer. He seems not to know that Sasaki is a detective, as they talk about how he's getting off at Moji, how much he's taken care of, and how he'll never forget it. He asks Sasaki if he wants to join him on another voyage, saying that it would be dangerous if he gets off now, but Sasaki refuses, saying that the sea doesn't suit him. If he gets caught, he gets caught, and that's when it happens. Sasaki thinks that maybe it was a mistake to think that if he could get away, he should get away. Tomorrow will be exactly 30 years, and he thinks that he'll be able to settle his own mistake. Says Oyoji. No one is in the crew room, but Akimi and Takeru are still there, putting their belongings in their bags. It's their last farewell, so Takeru says he wants to go with Akimi, but at that moment Senkachi comes into the room and says to Akimi, "Hey, do you want to get off with me? I'm going to get off with Sasaki-san. I knew from the beginning that he was a detective, and besides, he saved my life. I can't escape from him now, can I? I don't know how many years it will take, but if you're okay with that, come with me." Akimi replies, Really? Really? I'll wait for you no matter how many years." Takeru, who was there, couldn't stand it any longer and went outside. At that moment, he must have been asleep, because from the bed he heard a shriek saying that Hikobui's hat was missing. A friend came and advised him that it must have been washed out to sea in the storm yesterday, so he went on the deck. When the friend found that it was not there, he tore up the cash voucher that he had recorded as a debt and threw it into the sea. Since they were all friends who had been through the storm, they probably realized that life was more important than money. Senkachi and Sasaki are talking. Senkachi asks Detective if he could do just one favor for Akiko. He doesn't want the innocent girl to know about Anazame's villainy, so when he gets off the ship, can he pretend he doesn't know anything about it? "I'm in love with you that much," Sasaki says. "You saved the ship, and I'll never forget that." Senkachi says, "You're a good man, aren't you? I'm really glad that I didn't have to deal with Anazame thanks to you." Oyoji, who has been listening to this conversation, seems to finally be touched by the fact that Sasaki is a detective, and by the depth of Senkachi's wish that Akiko pretend not to know that her father, Anazame, was a bad person. The Kaiyo Maru arrives at Majiko port. A boat picks up Senkachi, Akimi, and Sasaki, who disembark at Majiko port, and takes them to land. When Sasaki asks Soichi for a handshake, he seems to think he's going to be handcuffed, but when he realizes that's not the case, he is moved to tears by Sasaki's human generosity. This is about the day before the storm, when Aoji told Sasaki that he murdered a woman 30 years ago. Sasaki's catchphrase, "I'll never forget," is a great one. Ken tells Akimi that he has changed his mind and has decided to return to the ship. Akiko leaves Senkachi with mixed feelings. Sasaki tells all members that Akimi and Senkachi are going to run a bar, and encourages everyone to go and enjoy a meal. After they board the boat and say goodbye to everyone, Senkachi says that's enough and says he can handcuff them, but Sasaki tells them to have a meal together and relax before heading out, and that he wants to express his gratitude to them for their manliness in overcoming the storm and saving the ship, not as detectives. This was a 1957 movie, when Yujiro Ishihara was 22 years old. It was one of Yujiro's best movies, full of excitement and thrills, and a vivid depiction of the importance of friendship amidst all its ups and downs.